up, throws.
And now your host, Ryan Hensley.
Now your host, Ryan Hensley.
Why is it still playing? You hear it?
I do not. We're good now.
My bad. Hey, here we are. My bad. I had the other screen. It was YouTube on the other side. I had my video and it was like playing because it's like a few second delay. So it's playing back. I heard it. You guys didn't heard it. Now everyone thinks I'm crazy. I probably am, but I'm here. What's up, Ro, man? How you doing, brother?
Hey, man, I'm doing good. You know, the 49ers, their draft is in the way. We've got a lot to talk about, and I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, man. I decided originally I was going to have, Coach on yesterday. Then I called you and Marco, and it's going to have both you on, but I'm like, well, I need to divide Rohan and Marco because they're both got a lot of information that I could pick their brains with. And I wanted to get your opinion. The name of this show is Ricky Pearsall. Truth. Here is the truth. A little bit of a, one. When people start doing YouTube, you learn you gotta make intriguing titles and
gotta
thumbnails.
Make it fun, gotta make it fun for the viewers,
Right, but really, what I want is what I love about Rohan is he's not a homer. I can tell you that much. Last year, I'm like trying to get him to tell me the Niners can win the Super Bowl for like a month and a half, and he refused, and he ended up being right. So Rohan will always give you his true, unbiased opinion, which is what I like about him. And I wanted to get his opinion on all of these draft picks that the 49ers just drafted because he will definitely tell you how he feels, no homerism attached. And that's what I like about Ro.
No, 100%. That's exactly what we're here to do.
Shout out to everybody that is here. 49ers Throwback says, thank you for joining, Faithful. Make sure y'all smash that like button and subscribe to both channels. Took the words right out of my mouth. Really helps me, and it really helps Rohan if you were watching the channel to hit the like button. It actually really helps the algorithm and gets us going. So if you would be so kind, please like this video. If you're watching it, hit the like button for me. And then if you're not subscribed, subscribe to my channel. I'm trying to get to 10,000 subs before the season. I'm going to do it. And also, here's what else I'm going to do. I'm going to put it out there in the world, man. I drink bangs every morning. I probably shouldn't. Well, that's probably not a good endorsement, but I drink bangs every single morning, water and bang. It's probably my biggest negative with my health, but I'm putting this out there because 1 year from now, I'm going to be drinking free bangs because I'm going to get Bang to sponsor me. Bang, You need to sponsor your boy. Okay. It's going to happen. I'm putting it out there in the atmosphere so you guys can hold me accountable if it doesn't happen. But 1 year from now, I'm going to be sponsored by Bang. Anyways, bro,
hey,
what's up,
there
man?
You go.
What's up? How you feel about all these guys, man? Give me. Let's start before we dive into individually these players. Can you give me an overall without talking individually? Just overall, what grade did you have for the 49ers in this draft?
I think grade wise, it's intriguing, right? Because again, grades they're very early. Probably give it around a B- to a B. And a part of that is the Niners picking at number 31. Are generally not going to have as good of a draft as some other teams. But I do give it to a B- to a B. I think that, it's an average, a little above average draft. I think that they have some good pieces. I thought that they maybe reached for certain players. I thought there were other players that they got good value on as well. And so overall, I'm right in the middle in my terms of my draft grade.
Okay, I gave them a B- C+, and we'll dive into why throughout this video. But my overall for the draft is C-, B+, or excuse me, B-, C+. That's what I have for the 49ers, and I'll explain why. I will say, though, before we dive into the draft picks, I love what they did with the undrafted free agents. I give them an A for their undrafted free agents. I feel like there's a few guys on their undrafted free agents list that could if not make the 49ers roster, could make a roster of some team in the future at some point. What do you think about the UDFAs before we dive into the draft picks?
Yeah, I agree with you. I thought that there were a couple of guys that stood out for me. Specifically, I was thinking about Drake Nugent. I thought that he was a guy who I thought kind of stood out for me in that regard. He's a guy at center who you could potentially consider to be a center future for the 49ers. I don't know if he'll make the roster necessarily, but a guy who could compete and a guy who could be the guy in the future for sure. They paid a good amount of money to a guy, a D tackle FAU, Evan Anderson. He's a guy who, with that investment, you might expect to potentially make some noise, especially at that D line kind of range where the Niners didn't maybe make as many selections as they usually do, in the draft. And so I think that, when you're looking at undrafted free agency, especially in this class, it's going to be hard to find quality players. It wasn't that deep of a class. Most of the quality players got selected within the first 5 rounds. But to still get some guys that you could think potentially make the roster, I think that's a good sign.
Agreed, man. So there's you brought up Drake Nugent. I don't know if everyone realizes, but I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, Rohan, Jake Brendel is an undrafted free agent right now at the center, correct? So
Exactly.
yeah. And we'll dive into this draft picks because if you've been watching my shows, at pick 31, I wanted to draft Jackson Powers Johnson, who is a center at 31. I felt like that would have been an immediate upgrade over Jake Brendel, and they could have upgraded the offensive line right there. 49ers have Jake Brendel, who's an undrafted free agent. 49ers also got 2 undrafted free agents who they have listed as center, Drake Nugent, but also Bryson Mays. They have him listed as a center as well. I think he was more of a tackle in college, but they have him listed as a center. So the 49ers are trying to find the next Jake Brendel in undrafted free agency, and honestly, they drafted Jarrett Kingston, who most people think is probably going to be a center, shorter arms, in the 6th round. But a lot of people think that they brought in Jake Nugent and as well as Bryson Mays to compete with Jarrett Kingston for that center role for the future. So the Niners really believe that you don't need to invest a high round into a center. They have one in Jake Brendel's undrafted free agent. They got a 6th rounder and 2 undrafted free agents, all competing for that center spot right now, man. So we're speaking on the undrafted free agents. That's why I'm talking about this. But I also like Tanner Mordecai. I think he's an interesting quarterback prospect that may have a chance to beat out Brandon Allen and make this roster, which is interesting. Cody Schrader, the running back. A lot of people think he might be better than Isaac Grendo, who the 49ers drafted in the 4th round, who we'll talk about. Then you have Tariq Owens, son of Terrell Owens, who, if he's 75% of what his dad is, it could be a guy. As well as Mason Pline, the 49ers need a tight end too. They need a tight end 3, tight end 4. They still haven't figured that out. I don't think the 49ers right now know what the pecking order is. They might have an idea, but they don't really know who's their tight end 2, tight end 3. So all of these guys have the potential to either make the 49ers roster, if not this year or years in the future, or another roster. So I thought they did good with UDFAs. Any of those guys strike you besides the one you talked about?
Yeah. I mean, you brought up Tanner Mordecai. He's a guy who I actually got to cover a Wisconsin Badger here this past year. So I've got to see him. And I don't know if he makes the roster specifically because I don't know if the Niners carry 3 quarterbacks, but he's a guy who give a guy like Brandon Allen a run for his money. He's a guy who I think embodies what the Niners want in a quarterback. Swagger. Yeah. He's a leader. He's got some of that, swagger to him in a way like Brock Purdy does. And so I think that that's going to, fit well with the culture, at least, even if it's on the practice squad for a year.
By the way, Rohan, I'm telling you right now, man, they're going to carry 3 quarterbacks. Haven't they done that the last 2 years?
I think so. Yeah, the last 2 years. So we'll see. The reason that I say maybe not is just because Josh Dobbs is a veteran option who's proven. And so you might trust that. And also, I don't know how many teams are ultimately going to carry 3 with this type of depth. But again, they've done it the last 2 years, like you've said. So we'll see.
Yeah, wager. Let me bookmark this. When I come back, I just like I like getting things right when Rohan's and proving Rohan wrong. It doesn't happen often, but I'm going to bookmark this one. We'll come back to it. All right, man. Well, let me know, brother. What do we think about? Let's go round for round. 1st round pick. Surprised a lot of people. Ricky Pearsall. Some people say they're really excited about it. Some people say he has some issues breaking open against press man coverage on his own. I'm interested in learning what you think of the Ricky Pearsall draft pick.
Yeah, I mean, this year I chose to extensively grade the receivers. I had a lot of receiver film that I ended up watching, and so Ricky Pearsall is a guy who I did not have, I believe, in my top 10 of receivers, but he was a guy who I said the fit is going to matter where he goes, and I think there are a lot of things that are right. Ricky Pearsall is a guy who can beat man coverage. I think you've seen a lot of statistics that show that. To me, I really like the player. He was one of my more favorite film players to watch just because you see the way he separates. I don't think he has 4.41 speed, but you see the way he separates. He's a good separator, can, works well at the top of his routes. He's a great contested catcher. And so he moves well as well, even after the catch. I think that there are a lot of ways the 49ers could utilize him. The reason I had him maybe lower, though, than others is just because when you specifically look at the reps against press coverage, I think that that's where his play strength certainly, or not certainly, but can be inconsistent. And that's the one thing that I thought the Niners may want to improve on a little more. But then again, how many teams are running out 2 press man corners? That there's a very few commodity. So to me, Ricky Pearsall, I thought was not I didn't have a first round grade on him. I had him on my big board closer in the late 50s, maybe early 60s. If you come together, he was in the top 15, I believe, or so of receivers for me. But I think this is a good player, and I'm going to say one thing, and I'm not going to try and cope or anything about the pick, but I do believe that this philosophy is true. If you're going to reach on a player, it's better to reach on a skill position player rather than a more projection type of player. What do I mean by that? Let's talk about offensive line. That's obviously a need. I thought the Niners were going to take an offensive lineman within the first the first 2 rounds. They had the opportunity and ultimately didn't. But with the skill position player, specifically with the receiver, you've seen the amount of receiving talent that comes around. Those guys are going to produce. They might not produce to the level that you might want them to. Those guys are going to produce. I think Pearsall is a very good receiver 2, receiver 3. I prefer him in the slot. I think he's going to do a lot of damage, especially even against man coverage in the slot. I think he also, he finds space pretty well. I just thought this pick might have been a little too early, maybe 1 round too early. Still, though, I feel like he's going to be a really good player, productive player. I like the player, and I think he fits the Niners.
Okay, so you like the player. So you had him ranked in your top 15 wide receivers?
I think he was around 15, right around 15.
Well, this doesn't encourage me, bro. Like, because if you're correct, the Niners, which receiver was he off the board? I don't even know. Like, how many receivers went before him?
Maybe 6, 7. He was 7.
Really? Okay. Really?
Or no, he was the 6th. He was the 6th. Leggett was the 7th. So yeah.
Okay. All right. So the Niners had him as their 6th favorite receiver, or at least fitting their program, their plans, what they have for the future. Let me ask you this. Jackson Powers-Johnson is who I wanted. He was sitting there available for the 49ers. To me, it was a week 1 starter upgrade over Jake Brindell that could have partnered with Brock Purdy for the foreseeable future here with the San Francisco 49ers. To me, that was the no-brainer pick. And the 49ers went receiver on that. Who's smarter, me or John Lynch? No. But really, which route is better to you? Drafting a Ricky Pearsall at 31 for a team that has a lot of receivers. There's 11 receivers on this roster right now. He's probably going to be, at best, if they trade Deebo Samuel, which probably won't happen, but if they do, at best, he's going to be your second man on the totem pole. Most likely, he's your 3rd or 4th receiver this year. So I just don't get it, man. And maybe Ricky's fine. Maybe this press man coverage that you talked about, that Jesse pointed out, that even his coach Herm Edwards talked about, that he needs to learn to improve. Right, he has to learn how to beat press man coverage at the line and how to get through the hands of NFL cornerbacks. Herm Edwards, his coach, one of his biggest supporters, said he needs to improve on this in the NFL. Jesse pointed out a lot of great film yesterday. You brought it up. So how is drafting a guy who's 3rd or 4th in the pecking order, who has problems beating press man coverage, a better draft selection than a clear upgrade at center? Can you explain, or is it, or do you agree? Let me know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think Powers-Johnson was going to he would have been a solid pick. He was a player I believe I had ranked higher than Pearsall on my board. If I'm thinking about it, if we're just stepping back and I'm thinking from the Niners perspective, I think it's one of 2 things. One, they understand their receiver situation currently. This is a pick for 2025 more than it is for 24. 2 of those 3 receivers, in my opinion, are not going to be with the team next year. I think Jawan Jennings leaves in free agency and the 49ers trade Deebo Samuel, get off that contract as they pay Brandon Ayuk. And so I think you're left with a bigger hole at receiver, especially as George Kittle is getting older. You want younger pass catchers, and that's where Pearsall comes in. To me, Pearsall is a safe pick. You know that he's going to be able to produce. He might not produce as a receiver 1, but the Niners don't need that because they have Brandon Ayuk. They understand his limitations, and I think that they believe he can flourish well as a receiver 2 or a receiver 3 that can fit with both inside outside with his route tree. And so I think that's their logic for the pick. They went with the safe pick that they know will address a hole that plays not similarly, I'll say, but can fill the Debo Samuel role. And they're going to have two man beaters on, opposite of each other with Pearsall and with Brandon Ayuk. I think that's their logic. Ultimately, though, I also thought that there were some offensive linemen on the board. I think that if Graham Barton had made it past 26 or 27 or wherever he went, think he would have probably been in strong consideration as an interior offensive lineman. Maybe some of the knocks on Powers Johnson, he's not as versatile. He might only be able to be relegated to center. And I think the biggest thing about the 49ers is one thing I think we've learned and something that they've kind of said, they're a lot more comfortable in their offensive line than the consensus or than the media and the fans are. They're more comfortable with it. They're fine letting Jake Brendel roll out there. And I think they also understand that the learning curve is maybe a little more than they'd expect for a different offense, for an offensive lineman. How much do you think that he can start in year one? And so maybe that's a question. I mean, again, would I have gone with the pick? Not necessarily, but I'm just trying to explain the logic they might have potentially gone with.
Well, we can try to explain the 49ers logic and maybe look, I'm not going to sit here and say I know more than the 49ers about football. I don't know more than Kyle Shanahan or John Lynch about football. That would be ignorant for me to say, but I do have my opinions based on what I have seen. I know the 49ers really well. I can tell you that much because I've been nothing but a fanatic since I was a kid, and I study them very closely. I don't understand. I don't get that philosophy, and you laid it out well, but to me, it's just how can you look at this offensive line and think you're good? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. Jake Brendel is not up to the standard that I would want
He's
for an
not.
offensive line.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I agree with you there. I think that when you talk about it, that's an average group. But I think also the Niners, when you talk about potentially drafting offensive line early in the first two rounds, they're probably thinking, how can we make this roster better in 2024? And I don't know if they believe that any of the guys selected available at 31 were going to come in and beat out Jake Brendel or beat out, and that's in their minds, right? I don't know if they thought that they were going to be able to beat out one of those two or any of the two interior guys, really, or even on the right side. I don't know if they were comfortable enough that they could beat him out. And then after that, the biggest thing with offensive linemen is they're more of a projection. At least for the Niners, at least they're more of a projection. Do you want the safer pick? Do you want a guy who you understand can contribute? And so, I mean, there are a lot of questions. That's why, again, my draft grade is a B minus or maybe even a B compared to some other drafts where I thought that other teams handled really well. 31, I think that was one of the selections that led to that grade.
Yeah, man, I think I understand who the 49ers are and how they feel about things and how they prioritize things, and they're more about system fits than they are overall talent. Which I don't think I agree with on that either. Like, to me, you find the best talent and you adjust your system for the talent. The 49ers are about finding the best system fit versus overall talent. Like, you can have all the talent in the
That's
world.
a
If
good
you don't fit
argument.
their
Yeah.
system, they don't want you. Which is, it's frustrating to me, to be honest with you. It seems like I'm going to be negative today. I'm not. Remember, I gave the UDFA's A's, man, but I'm just trying to be real about my frustrations with the 49ers and these draft picks. So if you had to bet, like, look, when you look at draft classes, right, in general with the 49ers, or look at the history of the 49ers draft classes under Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, the best year, 4 or 5 dudes emerged as actual football players, 49ers. The worst year, 1 or 2, depending on how you see things with Burford, right? Outside of Burford that year, not much else emerged from that class.
Right.
So what I'm asking you though, like, is Ricky Pearsall, in your opinion, going to be one of these guys that is an actual dude on this team?
I think that this is where we get into a different argument because absolutely, I think Pearsall is going to be a solid receiver 2 or solid receiver 3 in the NFL. I think when it comes back to it, is he going to be worth a first round selection? I ultimately think so, in the sense of his production during his rookie year. Now, some of the other concerns about Pearsall that I think are very, very important for a first round selection, the kid is going to be 24 or 20, I believe 24, age 25 season. He's going to be 29 or 30 by the time his rookie contract comes up. You're not going to extend a player for a second deal when he's that old. At least that wasn't the hope. You hope that some of these guys, Brandon Ayuk, for example, he's going into his age 27 season when he's getting his extension. You're hoping to get these guys through 2 contracts so that you can get them for a 8-year period. And that kind of solidifies that position for that long. That's what you're hoping for in a first round pick. And with Pearsall, I don't know if you're going to get that just because his age is going to be pretty significant by the time that second contract comes up. But do I think he's going to be a good player? Yes. I think that he's going to be a talented receiver too. Again, I don't think his ceiling is a receiver 1, at least not yet. We'll see how he's able to emerge. I think, though, he's going to be a very good complementary piece to Brandon Ayuk. And I think that that's kind of what the 49ers were looking for. How do we get productive players? Because as I said, it's better to reach on productive skill position players than it is to reach more on projects, because you know that they're still going to be able to produce. Maybe not at the level that you might initially expect, but they're going to be able to produce and be good. I think this one's going to be an intriguing pick because you're going to look back on it. You're going to say, this player was good. This player was good for us, probably worth a 31st overall pick. But then you're also going to be questioning, it's not about the pick. It's about the players that were also there at the pick. That's where I think the Niners could be questioning in the future. And that's where some of the reach comments might come in.
Yeah, and I have a feeling that that's going to be the case 5 years from now when Jackson Powers Johnson is a solid fixture in the Raiders' offense and proven to be worth pick 31. I really believe that that's going to be something they look back on. You say Ricky Pearsall can be a wide receiver 2. What about this year, right? They got Deebo Samuel. They got Juwan Jennings. Juwan Jennings, I believe, what do you have, 19 catches last year as wide receiver 3 for the 49ers?
I think he averaged maybe like 2. I think it was like 2 or 3 targets a game. Yeah.
Yeah. So Ricky Pearsall, year 1, is he going to be prioritized above Juwan, below Juwan? I think my best guess is that he'll get 15% of targets that used to go to Deebo and probably half of the targets that go to Juwan. So I'm thinking at best this guy's going to get 20 catches, 30 catches this year. Do you agree, or do you think it's going to be something bigger than that?
I think Pearsall's role is really just going to be, I think it's going to be attributed to injury. I think the Niners were shopping Deebo Samuel, would have been content moving on from him had they gotten the mid-round selection that they wanted. Ultimately, obviously, that's not happening. Samuel's a 49er, and I think that's also best for their win-now mentality in terms of Samuel's a better player probably right now than Pearsall, overall player, that is. I think he's a better player than Pearsall right now. So, to me, that's where I was going to ask a question on Twitter, in that, what is a successful rookie season for Ricky Pearsall? Because you don't expect him to compete, or not compete, but you don't expect him to contribute that much in 2024 when you have those 3 receivers, right? Jennings is a great slot type, and he's the 49ers slot type. He's a guy who can block really well, a guy who can be a third down aficionado. Deebo Samuel, on the other hand, sure, he has his flaws, but he's still a guy who's been really productive when he's on the field for the 49ers, and more importantly, has a big impact on the game. And so I don't know how many targets Pearsall is going to be taken away. I think the Niners could do one of 2 things. One, you kind of rotate a little more with that 4th receiver with Pearsall in there to keep the other guys fresh. Or 2, if an injury occurs, that's kind of where Pearsall's role might be more solidified. But yeah, I mean, do you expect more than 20 catches a game? Because right now, if you're looking at the depth chart, Pearsall is option number 5 or 6 in the receiving game. You've got Brandon Ayuk, you've got George Kittle, you've got Christian McCaffrey, you've got Deebo Samuel, and you've got Juwan Jennings. That's 5 names I just named. Pearsall might be 6th, and maybe he eclipses Juwan Jennings. Maybe because of the investment, the Niners put him in there more early. But I think, like I said at the beginning, this is more of a 2025 pick where he might go from the 6th option to the 3rd option or something like that, rather than a 2024 pick.
Yeah, and that kind of annoys me, to be honest. That's what frustrates me. I mean, maybe Ricky Pearsall is going to be great, but to me, if he's the 5th or 6th target on this team, which is probably realistic, you laid everybody out. You spent your 31st pick on a guy who's going to be the 5th or 6th target in a win now year, right? With a window, everyone's talking about this window's closing. George Kittle's getting older, Deebo's getting older, CMC, Trent Williams, like this. They talk about this is the window, right? We need to win now, and the Niners obviously don't look at it that way, but they saying that their window's open. Brock Purdy's cheap. Like, let's make moves that are going to benefit the team now. And if Ricky Pearsall realistically is going to get somewhere around 20 catches this year, right? Maybe 25, 30 at the most, I would say, for Ricky Pearsall. Unless you're right. You're right. If people get injured, that changes everything. But if he gets 25 catches this year, I don't know. It just frustrates me. I feel like there are better moves if you got Jackson Powers Johnson. You have a center upgrade over Jake Brendale. And yes, Kyle probably would have thought he wasn't prepared because the system's so damn complex. But F that. Put him in. Let him learn. It's already up. He's a better athlete than Jake Brendale. He's more physical. He's stronger. He can be a better player for you. That's the thing that gets me frustrated. But it is what it is, man. I'm hoping Ricky Pearsall works out and justifies pick 31, and we're all happy about it. And maybe it doesn't come until 25, 26 when we actually can judge all of these guys, really. All right, man. Dave Barclay gives a super chat, says, "What up, Ryan?" Or "What up, my guys? Ryan the G Hensley, and don't mess with the Rohan. I missed the first 14 minutes, but I'm always trying to catch your thoughts. Appreciate the show. Appreciate you guys. Keep it up. Thank you for the super chat, Dave. Much appreciated, man. Glad to have you here." What you say?
Nah, I said we appreciate you. Thanks, man.
Yeah, and I want to give a shout out to Lester McDaniel. Says, "Really like listening to your takes on the various Niner content creators podcast, Ryan, and I'm here to support the channel. Keep it up, brother." I'm going to, and I appreciate it. I want to point out this comment just because I thought it was very kind of you to say, man. Thank you very much. All right, we talked about the wide receiver. We'll see what happens with Ricky Pearsall. Second pick in the draft was cornerback Renardo Green from FSU. So again, here I'm at. I'm a offensive line fanatic. I wanted Jackson Powers Johnson, pick round 2 for the 49ers. Comes pick 63. They traded down with the Chiefs, right? Traded down with the Chiefs. Let the Chiefs go ahead and draft Kingsley Sumatea after the Ravens also drafted Roger Rosengarten. Two tackles that they flew up to see Roger Rosengarten. I thought he would have been a good pick in round 2. I didn't want one of these late guys in round 1. I thought that you could find good value in round 2 with a Roger Rosengarten or a Kingsley Sumatea. Both those guys may or may not have started over Colton McKivitz, but I could see them being starters the year after and being a big upgrade over Colton McKivitz. That's who I wanted. They went ahead and got Renardo Green, corner from FSU. What do you think about the pick?
I thought this pick was very similar to the first pick in the sense that I thought this guy, especially when watching Renardo Green, culture fit. He's a Niner. He fits what the Niners want to do. He's a press corner, feisty press corner, really physical with his hands. Maybe not the elite deep speed. I forget his 40 time. He runs similar to maybe a late 4.4, early 4.5 guy. Maybe not the elite deep speed, but he's a guy who seems really technical. He's a guy who seems good with his, with his hands, good with being physical. And I think that kind of mental preparation suits you best for the NFL in terms of playing a role early. And so I think this pick was intriguing. If you read around the consensus, a lot of people either really loved this pick or thought it was a reach as well. I thought Green was a good player, though. I think that this one, of all the picks, Green has the best chance to contribute early. And I think you also bring up a good point about the offensive line. Away from the Green pick, the Niners, the reason that I think this draft is intriguing in maybe not a great way is because you wanted to come out of this draft with at least one answer at offensive tackle for the future. Colton McKivitz, you extended him this year. You got yourself some flexibility, and so he has 2 more years of team control. But Trent Williams seems like he probably could retire after this year. He said he came back. He wanted to reach that, the Pro Bowl record and other records for offensive linemen for consistently, or the amount of Pro Bowls made. He's going to reach that record this year. And if the Niners, do well, he could very well retire. At that point, you might have to start a rookie next year because you don't have a left tackle right now on your roster that could supplant, or that could, be the successor to Trent Williams. I thought that's why you could have gone for a tackle at one point in the draft, be it left or right. Roger Rosengarten was the guy who it seems like the Niners like. John Lynch even acknowledged it. We like Roger. And so if that was your guy, you should have probably traded up. I thought that could have been a thing where you traded up, you got the offensive tackle of your choice, wouldn't have costed too much. And plus, the Niners ultimately made moves anyway. It's not like some of those late round picks were were there that they plan to take as well. So I think that was the one questionable part where it felt like if you wanted an offensive tackle, especially with the run starting at 55 with Patrick Paul going, you should have gone and gotten one, right? Because there were 4 tackles taken from 55 to when the Niners picked at 63. It was Patrick Paul, Blake Fisher to the Texans, Rosengarten went to the Ravens, and then obviously we trade down and Kingsley Suamataia goes at 63 to the Chiefs. I don't think Suamataia was their guy because the Chiefs wanted a tackle. It was pretty clear. The Niners, that trade back, if Suamataia was not their guy, great move because you move up 40 spots. That ultimately helped you later on. But you do question, when are you going to get the future tackle, especially considering the Niners aren't a team that, plug and plays offensive linemen into starters immediately, or you might not be as comfortable with that reality. I really like the pick though. Renardo Green, think this is a solid spot for him to go around the 63, somewhere between late second, early third type of player. And I think once again, like we said earlier with Pearsall, this is a true team fit. He is a Niner corner because of that press man type of ability. Should be a replacement for one of those outside corners within the next year.
So you think Demo's going to go to slot and Renardo would play on the outside? That's how you see it with Charvarius?
I think so. That's the way that I see it. But I also could see them looking to compete with some of those, Yadam and some of those outside guys because Demo might want to just stay an outside corner, I also could see Renardo maybe even sliding inside a little bit. Personally, I'd prefer him on the outside. But regardless, right now, that's a good problem to have. You have an open spot at cornerback. You have a lot of intriguing options, both young and both veterans. I think that Renardo Green, another good player here.
Yeah, I mean, I like Renardo Green, man. It's interesting to me. The 49ers before the draft, I thought they had the best DB room that they've had in a long time with Diamador Lamore, Charvarius Ward, Rock Ya-Sin, Isaac Edom. Those guys are all good. And then they had Renardo Green. I'm hoping Renardo Green ends up being a good pick for these guys. He's to me like one of these guys. I'm like, I don't know. I could see him being the biggest contributor, though, like you said. Like he could be a week 1 starter for the 49ers, either at slot corner or outside corner. I could see that. I don't think he's going to start over Demo. I'd be shocked if he starts over Demo, but maybe he does. But I do think he'll probably be your CB3. So in certain situations, it'll be Demo and Ward, but then when they go into nickel, they'll bring out Renardo. And even if that means Demo slides in, Renardo stays outside or vice versa, I could see him taking that role in year 1. So I could see him contributing. And I don't hate the pick at all. I have a friend that plays at FSU who's really tapped in there. I texted him, asked him his opinion on Renardo Green, and he didn't give me much. He just said he's solid. He's not like some elite corner that we put out in the past, but he's solid, which I guess is a good endorsement. We'll find out. I didn't hate the pick. I just didn't see the immediate need for a corner this year. But they are all out of contract after this year. So maybe that is what this is planning ahead. But like you said, like I want to go back to what you were talking about when it comes to Trent Williams.
Yeah.
For one, I'm convinced that Trent Williams' replacement is going to come from either free agency or trade. This team went from Staley to Trent Williams. I don't see them being able to draft a guy high enough unless they trade up, right? Most of those really good left tackles come early in round 1, and they're probably not going to be there because they're a winning organization. They're always going to be towards the bottom of the draft for the foreseeable future. So they're not going to have those opportunities to draft those really great left tackles. So I think what they're going to do is acquire him the same way they got him, which is through trade or through free agency. They'll sign the best left tackle available in free agency and sign him that way. But they also need a right tackle. And that's the thing. I feel like they're getting to the point now, Rohan, where they're going to have to get a right tackle instead of, needing to get a right tackle or wanting to get a right tackle. Because, right, like you draft a right tackle, it doesn't work out. You can draft another one next year and you're still good. But if you get to the point where Trent Williams is retired and Colt McKivitz is out of contract, now you have to nail a right tackle. And if you don't, you're screwed. And that's just why I would have got a tackle with this spot. But hopefully Renardo Green works out and all that good stuff. Let's talk about the 3rd round pick, man. This is one of my top 2 picks to me in this draft. Puni. I'm hopeful. I don't know if it's possible, but I'm hopeful he can play center or tackle. Um,
Mhm.
I think center's in the realm of possibilities, a little big. He honestly is not that small from a tackle body. He can actually play tackle, right tackle with his frame, but he's probably marked as the right guard, which to me was the third most biggest need on the offensive line, center and right tackle being 1 and 2. And then you have Feliciano right now. You have Burford, who I don't know, maybe they're done on Burford. Maybe they're sold out on Burford already and they don't believe in him. But you still at least have Feliciano for this year, which I think is probably your third best offensive lineman on this team, right? You got Trent Williams, Aaron Banks, and Feliciano. So why are we trying to replace Feliciano? We should be worried about Colton McKivitz and Jake Brendel in my head.
I
What do you
think.
think? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
go ahead. No,
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think this pick is actually a really intriguing pick, and the reason is it gets my mind a little jumbled up about what the Niners could do. You said John Feliciano might be the third best guy. Feliciano's natural position to me is center. I think Feliciano is a good center. He's played center in the past. I know he didn't have the best year when he was playing center with the Giants the year before last when he was when he wasn't on the Niners, but he showcased good skills get a good skill set at times last year. I think he's a guy who you could definitely consider to be one of the top offensive linemen on this team again this year. Again, 1 year deal, but I think the Niners have a lot of flexibility because Dominic Puni, first of all, is a good player. He's a guy he's got good size for guard. I think he fits in and he also gives you not only maybe ready now, but also insurance because Aaron Banks is a free agent next year. I personally don't expect the Niners to bring Aaron Banks back just because of how free agency is with offensive linemen and how the guard market ultimately goes out. I think Aaron Banks is going to get a significant contract on the open market, and I don't think the 49ers are just going to be able to match that contract, just like they weren't with Laken Tomlinson. Mike McGlinchey was another guy. I think Banks was maybe better than both of those players, but I also think ultimately he's average. He's average, maybe slightly above average, maybe in the 10 to 15 range for guards or somewhere around there. I don't know if he's the player who you want to pay a top of the line market level deal to. And I don't think the Niners are very, they haven't necessarily paid many offensive linemen in the past. And so to me, I think Puni provides you some insurance there, but more so, I think at right guard now, you have a couple of options. Feliciano is a proven guy. You know what you can get from him. Would not be surprised if they have him slide over to center, compete with Brendel at center, have him play both center and right guard in camp, get a feel for both positions, and then have Puni also potentially compete at right guard. Again, your other question was where does that leave Spencer Burford? Spencer Burford played tackle in college. Would not be surprised, now that there's a logjam at guard where you're not necessarily having to force him to play at guard. Why don't you try him out on outside? See how he kind of fits on the outside with that athleticism to potentially, fit better against some of those quicker guys. He's not the best guy against power. You move him to the outside, he might not have to deal with power as much. Maybe it showcases his athleticism a little more, and at least let him compete. With Colton McKivitz out there on the right side, see if you can get something going and try and revitalize that draft class. And so I think you have a lot of options here. What I'll say about Puni, I like the player. Like the 49ers went up to go get him. He's a guy they clearly had on their board. You go up to go get him. I think this is going to be a very, very solid player for the 49ers and a guy who, even as a sixth-year senior, is going to fit well with this team. I think he's a guy who has nimble feet. I don't remember what his 40 time was. I don't care that it wasn't great because he has quick feet. And I think he also is a solid guy who can get to the second level. That's something that's important in this system, in the run game. And I think he's going to work well in both the run and the pass. So the reason I like this pick maybe more than most is because of the flexibility it provides for the 49ers in a way as they try and improve this offensive line, not only in the future, but specifically in 2024 as well, because it allows them to kind of have a few more moving pieces where you could potentially have a line that involves, Williams, Banks, Feliciano, Puni, and then whoever at right tackle.
Okay, so I like Dominic Puni. I think this is a great pick. I like the player a lot, and I think he's going to contribute. It might even kill my prediction that the 49ers are going to roll with the same starting five from last year. That was my prediction. Puni may be the guy to ruin that prediction of mine because I feel like he's talented. If he's not he could be the highest, the second best lineman on this team or fourth at worst, I would imagine, right? He's not going to be the sixth guy on this team on offensive line or the fifth, in my opinion. So I like the pick, and I'm glad he's here, and I think he can help the team. The problem I have with the plan that you laid out, and I'm not saying it's your plan, you're saying it's a possible plan by the 49ers, but the reason why I hate that plan, and it wouldn't surprise me if that is the plan, and I hate it, and I'll tell you why I hate it.
Go ahead.
Feliciano is temporary. He's at the end of his career, and moving him to center gives Brock no stability at that position. I don't like that. The other reason is I honestly think Feliciano's a bonehead, and I don't want a center who is a bonehead. I'm just being honest really right now. Like the way I'm speaking to you, he comes off as a bonehead. I want a really highly intelligent center. I think that's important to me. Some of the things he said and done to me make me think that. Maybe he's not. Maybe he's super ultra intelligent, but he conducts himself like a bonehead. So I don't like that in a center. I'm being real with you guys. The other thing that bothers me about that plan that you laid out is if Dominic Puni is the replacement for Aaron Banks, who I see as a top 3 alignment on this team right now. If he's a replacement from Aaron Banks, the 49ers didn't do shit. They didn't improve at all on the offensive line. If all he's doing is replacing Aaron Banks, they haven't improved at all. They still have all the same freaking holes they had before. So I hope that that's not the case, because I think Aaron Banks is good. I think he's a B- left guard. That's how I look at Aaron Banks, and to me, that's good compared to the C's that we got at center and right tackle. So I want Aaron Banks to be extended, and they should have done a long time ago to me. And I want Puni to be a replacement at either center or a long-term solution at guard or right tackle, preferably center or right tackle, because those are the biggest holes. But if right guard's his spot, so be it. And then we'll figure out what we do at center and right tackle next year. But if we walk away with this and all we have is Aaron Banks' replacement, then the 49ers have not gotten better at all, and that pisses me off. Now, as far as the pick of Dominic Puni, I think he's really good, really talented guy, great value in round 3. One of the top 2 picks I have on this team, and to me, he's one of the 2 guys that I really believe that are going to be good.
Yep. I think that's good breakdown. Good breakdown.
All right, sir. And round 4, Malik Mustapha, who is another one of my favorite picks in this draft for the 49ers. He was a guy that I had he's a guy that was falling before the draft that I really liked, that I wanted the 49ers to get. I think he's underrated, but like people talk about we all know his strengths, right? He's a downhill player, can tackle the shit out of him. He's one of the best tacklers. He's great in the run game. He's great in the blitz. He's great in the box, all of those things. The weakness they talk about with him supposedly is his coverage, but when I watched the film, I didn't see that. And I know maybe that comes from his 40 time not being in the upper echelon, but he was clocked at 23 miles per hour in a game, which is really freaking fast. He plays really fast. So I'm sold that Malik Mustapha is going to be a contributor to this team at some point. Hopefully it's this coming year. I could see him contributing in some way this year, maybe on third downs. If nothing else, on third downs and on special teams, he could come in. But in the future, I think this guy could be just as good, if not better, as the guys we have there right now. So what do you think of Malik Mustapha?
Yeah, when I look at him, I see Talano Hufanga's replacement, or a guy who kind of will fit that second safety role. You drafted Jair Brown last year. You have Hufanga coming back from injury, but Hufanga is also a free agent at the end of this year. I think Mustapha serves, in a solid role. He could be that third safety, a guy who can come in if an injury is there, and then he kind of fills that role next year as the 49ers remain pretty cost-effective at the safety position. Mustapha, like you said, a good hitter. He's a guy who I think can play pretty instinctually. Or not instinctually, baby, but I think that he's got good bursts like Hufanga does. A guy who can come in the box. He can help, help well in run support. He's a guy who kind of hunts for the football, in the run game and things like that. I think he's a good player in that sense. You talk about the coverage. I think this system fits him well. That's what I'll say, because I think, the Niners will run a lot of cover 3 looks. They'll run a lot of these man press looks where the safety can kind of be more, I'd say the safety can kind of be more like a reactionary type of piece, like especially that, that over the top safety where you're able to evaluate everything. And again, you got to build the instinct up, but you're able to evaluate everything and then go make plays on the ball. Deshaun Gibson made plays on the ball last year. We've seen Hufanga make plays on the ball. this kid right here, Malik Mustapha, he's a good guy who can go and make plays on the ball. He's a guy who I think will maybe not the high interception numbers, but he's a guy who I think can go ahead, break up passes, and have that short burst be used to his instinct. He fits the 49ers mold of a safety as well. Maybe smaller, 5'11", maybe around 210, 215 pounds. A smaller guy, but a guy that moves pretty darn well. And I think a guy who is going to be a solid fit for the 49ers that has a role in 2025 once Talanoa Hufanga hits free agency.
Yeah, another guy they're going to be losing, Hufanga. Yeah, I like Malik Mustapha, man. Everything I've watched about him, he doesn't really have many weaknesses in my mind. I mean, I guess top speed is his weakness, which that's why I think he gets the can't cover label. But I don't think it's really accurate. I think he does really well. He has phenomenal instincts. John Lynch said this was his favorite interview in the whole entire pre-draft process was Malik Mustapha. So he's a very intelligent guy. He said he reminds him of himself, which is great. John Lynch is a Hall of Fame safety. So yeah, I'm really excited about Malik Mustapha. I think this is a great pick. When it comes to safeties, I think John Lynch has shown he's done a pretty good job so far. And Jair Brown, Hufanga, Malik Mustapha, I don't know how much he's personally responsible for the safeties, but ultimately I think he does have the final pick on a safety. I would imagine that that's the case, kind of like Kyle does with wide receivers, because Kyle thinks he was a wide receiver. I know he was in college. I just being a jerk. But yeah, Malik Mustapha, to me, Malik Mustapha, Dominic Puni, those guys, those are my two guys that I have extreme confidence in being a dude. Renardo Green, I'm kind of like a little bit unsure, but I have a little bit of confidence in him. He'd be in the second tier for me. And then Ricky Pearsall is probably in that tier as well, where I'm not really sure if he's gonna live up to the pick 31. But when it comes to Dominic Puni and Malik Mustapha, I think I'm really happy with those two picks. All right, now we move in the second half of the draft. Isaac Guerendo. He's another guy I had on my board, somebody I wanted, not because I can tell you that he's going to be really good. It's just because he's such a freak athlete. Why not give him an opportunity? Because if he can live up to his athletic potential, I mean, this guy is one of the freakiest athletes you could have on a team. What is he, 4.33 for a running back, which is unheard of, 42.5-inch vertical. The guy is a freak athlete. And so if he can live up to his athleticism and reach that potential, you're talking about a great pickup for the 49ers, hopefully. The thing with him, though, to me, he's like a boomer bust pick with Isaac. He could, he was injured a lot in college. He didn't have a lot of production in college, and it's kind of weird that his production was so low considering what a great athlete he is. So we'll see what Kyle Shanahan does with him. One thing I wanted the 49ers to do was get younger and faster. They kind of got younger, but all these guys are old as hell for rookies. But they definitely got faster with Isaac and Ricky and Jacob Callan, who we'll talk about after this. But what's your thoughts on Isaac Guerendo? Do you think he's a good pick?
Yeah, he's another kid who I got a chance to cover in college. He played at Wisconsin for a good portion of his career before transferring to Louisville. And you're right. I think the injury issues are significant, right? He's dealt with a lot of injuries. Obviously, he's bounced back. He's in the position that he is right now. He's got great speed. The one thing I'll point out with that speed, I do believe his short area quickness is not as great, maybe, as that speed might indicate. He's a little stiff, but that's expected for a guy of his size and his stature. So, still a freak athlete. To me, this is the Elijah Mitchell replacement, a one-cut runner who can turn up upfield, who can be a home run type of hitter, a guy with great speed, and a guy who also has a lot of special teams experience, who can play, solid in that role, especially with the new kickoff rules. I think he could fit in well with that role. And so to me, I think Isaac Guerendo, he's a guy who you're trusting the traits and you're trusting the athletes, or you're trusting the traits in the athlete. And you're also understanding he's not going to have to be, play a significant role. He's a guy who can just one cut, go downhill, be that backup, a solid backup like Elijah Mitchell is to Christian McCaffrey. And the other thing, like Elijah Mitchell, he's a bigger back. He's a bigger back with great athleticism. And so, he can be a little more physical as well. I think the main worry, though, is the injuries, And I think the explosiveness isn't necessarily as great. And so I think that those are the two biggest knocks. But here's the thing. With this class here, not the strongest class, I don't mind you trading up two of those later round picks that ultimately I don't know if they're going to make the team if you keep those 2 5th-round selections. With the way that this class is, I think that you're fine. Go ahead, trade up, go get your guy. This is probably your RB. At least he's going to make the top 4 this year. And if you trade Elijah Mitchell, could be in a position to have a bigger role this year. But regardless, I think this is also closer to a 2025 pick. I think I like everything that you've seen from Guerrero, and I think he also fits really well in a timeshare. You saw that at Louisville this past year when he was able to maintain his health, kind of being in that timeshare. I think that he's going to fit well, and he's a weird case where because of the injuries, he hasn't had has had as much college production. You're hoping that he has some more tread on his legs because of that.
Yeah, you brought up his size. That's something I didn't mention. He is a big dude. What, he's 6'1", 220, I believe, something like that. So to be that
220.
size and that fast is great. Another thing he does really well is block, which I know was a big reason why the 49ers liked him. I've been saying it for a while. I don't think Elijah Mitchell makes this team. I think he's going to be traded for like a 6th-rounder at some point. I really believe that he's just getting older and he's always injured, and he's great. Never fumbled the ball. I like his talent, but I think these picks are they obviously got 2 running backs, right? Isaac Guerrero and then Cody Schrader.
Right.
Because they're interested in upgrading the running back position, and I think they'll probably move Elijah Mitchell, if I had to guess. That's been a prediction of mine for a while now. I have other questions I want to ask you outside of these draft picks. We got 3 picks left, so we'll go through them quickly after I read Dave Barclay's super chat. Patriot Builders of Montana listens because I listen, and all my guys know Ryan Hensley and Rohan, also Jesse Grant and even Brother Bob. They don't dog on Niners, but they sure listen to it because of me. Right on, man. I appreciate. Shout out to Patriot Builders of Montana, all the guys out there working with Dave. Good luck to you guys, man, today. Hope you build something nice. Thanks for listening. All right, round 5, Jacob Cowing, receiver, slot guy. Real quick, man, who do you think is going to return punts and kickoffs for the 49ers while we're bringing up Jacob Cowing? I'm just curious.
I honestly think this is like a wide open job because there are a lot of players that I think could fit that role. If you even think Ricky Pearsall could fit that role, John Lynch talked about his special teams ability as well. I believe he could fit that role. Guerrero could fit that role. Cowing could fit that role. Debo Samuel could fit that role. I think there are a lot of players. So I think it depends. Do you want to put one of your top skill position players in that situation with the new kickoff rules, or are you willing to let one of these younger guys potentially carve out more of a role and keep the other guys fresh? I mean, regardless, though, I think you've got a good amount of opportunity for a lot of guys to fill that Ray McLeod role this year.
Yeah, and Jacob Cowing to me is Ray McLeod, basically. That's like what he was brought in. He's a pure slot guy, small dude. I like him. He's interesting. We'll see how he can work his way up in this deep 49ers wide receiver room, but I think he's a possibility to fill that role. What do you think of, real quick, what do you think of Jacob Cowing? Because I want to get through the other 2 as well.
Yeah, overall good player. I think this is great value for him. I know my guy Brad Graham, he was high on him. He's the guy who kind of put me on to Jacob Cowing. I know the size is a little bit of a concern, but he does everything else well. And so I think with the Niners, with the way that they keep guys in space, this is another player who I didn't necessarily expect them to draft because of the size profile and with the way that they like blocking, but he's a guy who you could maybe expect to have a bit of a role like Ray McLeod, try and fit in a couple of different avenues down the line.
I would have got Malik Washington here. He's the same type of build, same kind of player. But when I watched Malik Washington, his tape is just great to me. He jumped out to me big time. And the Dolphins ended up getting him at 186, I believe. And I think they're going to do big things with Malik Washington. So let's talk about round 6, Jared Kingston. I'm going to be honest, man, when they drafted this guy, I had no idea who he was. I had to learn about him after the fact. Short arms, not really powerful, not strong. He played guard at USC. I think he's more of a center in the NFL. I'm not so sure about this one. We'll have to see how it works out. I don't know. From what I've seen, I wasn't like impressed with Jared Kingston. Honestly, I think Dugan might have just as much of a chance as being the center for the 49ers in the future as Jared Kingston. But I don't know. How do you feel about Jared Kingston?
I think this is where, you get later in the draft, and in a draft as weak kind of in terms of depth as this one, you can kind of take shots in the dark. The way that I see this Kingston pick, shot in the dark at center like they had on Nick Sakel a couple of years ago. Athletic profile through the roof. That's what they want at center. One of those really, really good athletes that could ultimately fit there. He's obviously going to move or if you play center, you'd move from guard to center. I think that's the main thing that stands out. Athletic profile. Obviously, we're not privy to the interviews. Probably had a good mind if they intend to play him at center as well. Do I think he makes the roster? I think that's like a 50-50 right now. I don't know if he makes the roster because they do have some other depth pieces along with the guys that they brought in. Even if Mugent kind of makes it over him, or Puni and the rest of the guys that they kind of have, some of the veterans, he might be a cut candidate. But again, athletic profile, I think that this is one of those you're throwing a dart and hoping it kind of hits. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I see it from it with this type of draft.
Yeah, I think the 49ers got to hear, like, we still need a center. So they just grabbed honestly, I don't know. Good luck to Jared Kingston. I don't mean to insult the guy if he ever watches this. I apologize. I don't know you. But I don't see much. To be real, I don't get this pick. If one of these picks doesn't make the roster, my money's on Jared Kingston. I think what I see from Nugent is just as good, if not better. So we'll see, though. I would love to be proven wrong. I hope he balls out and makes me look foolish. Last guy I think is the best value in this whole entire draft to me, Tatum Bethune. When I watched his film, so my guy that went to Florida State University, he texted me. I texted him about Renardo Green. As soon as we drafted Tatum Bethune, he texted me and let me know that we got a dog. This is a great pick. He really likes and reminds him of Dre Greenlaw. There was an interview of Tatum Bethune saying that Dre Greenlaw is who he tries to emulate after. He had a lot of the same skill set, sideline to sideline, fast dude, good tackler, mean, vicious. I think he might actually make the team in round 7, and I think this is a good pick. What do you think of Tatum Bethune?
The first highlight that I saw of Tatum Bethune was completely on accident. I mean, I was watching Renardo Green's film, right? And this is against LSU when he's covering the the two receivers. And I see this humongous hit on Jaden Daniels. And I'm like, who the hell is that? And it's Tatum Bethune. If you've seen the video of Jaden Daniels just getting absolutely flatlined in that LSU FSU game, Tatum Bethune's the one that made the hit. But I think, like you said, this is the 49ers type of linebacker. I don't know if he's overly athletic overall, but I think that he's a guy who the Niners like because he's got really, really good instincts. I think he's got good quickness, like short area quickness. You don't need top end speed as a linebacker. Jalen Graham kind of proved that last year with that 4.64. The Niners still liked him. The only question with him is it's a really loaded room. Will he have enough opportunity to showcase his skill set? Or is this kind of like I'm anticipating more of a practice squad guy? Niners develop that linebacker room, and then when some of those veterans get flushed out next year, Tatum Bethune could potentially get a chance to make the roster next year. That's the way I look at it. But again, this is a Niners type of linebacker, maybe a little bigger than some of the other guys. But I think that he's a guy who could, stick a little bit in coverage, good short area quickness, and I think that the Niners will ultimately help him, look for him to develop, probably on the practice squad in year 1.
Got it. All right, man. So who's your favorite pick of all these guys? If you had to pick, not as like a fan, like just as who's going to be what's the best pick the 49ers made in this draft to you?
I think that's a good question. I'd probably go trade aside, because they did trade a good amount, but I don't really care given this draft. Dominic Puni. I think that Puni is going to be the best value pick overall. When you just look at the player and the place that he was picked, I think Puni is going to be the best value player. I think he's going to be a real solid offensive lineman in this class.
Cool. I think it's Malik Mustapha and Puni. Those are my two. All right, man. What are the biggest storylines? We're approaching OTAs now. We got rookie training camp. OTAs is coming up. There's a lot of different storylines that could emerge. What are you going to be looking for? What storylines are the biggest to you headed into OTAs?
For the first time in a long time, we have no quarterback thing to worry about. I think overall, when it comes to OTAs, well, one, you're going to see, is Brandon Ayuk going to get his extension before then? Because if not, you're probably not going to see him play much. And I think that could be a blessing in disguise, because that means Ricky Pearsall is going to be, getting some run with the top offense. I'm going to be curious to see what his role is. Otherwise, I think at cornerback, I think that's a position where I want to see who's playing where. What do the Niners envision as the inside and outside guys? Because that's a deep competition room, and I think there's some good talent over there at cornerback. Elsewhere, I think I want to see probably, at linebacker as well. I know we just mentioned it, but how does the rotation figure out with Dre Greenlaw still rehabbing from injury? Is Devondre Campbell going to get a lot of snaps? Which one of those younger guys can emerge? I think that those are kind of the three groups that I'm kind of looking at kind of curiously to see how does not only this draft fit, but how does the overall roster kind of look in some of those competitions.
Yeah, I think you need some good ones. I actually am looking forward to quarterback stuff, Rohan. Tanner Mordecai, man, I want to see him take Brandon Allen's job. I love quarterback's my favorite position out of all positions in every sport. Honestly, I don't know, it's just a fascinating position to me, and I'm looking forward to seeing if Tanner Mordecai can beat out Brandon Allen, and I'm maybe give Dobbs a little run for his money. I don't know. I mean, with Brock Purdy, it kind of inspired me to care more about late round quarterbacks or UDFA quarterbacks. And a lot of people, you covered Tanner Mordecai, right? For Wisconsin. How do you compare him to Brock Purdy? How do you compare the two?
I think Mordecai, I mean, in terms of like I said, I think swagger is similar. Mordecai is a fiery guy. He's a guy who can be a leader, maybe like an underrated leader, but when I was here, I mean, he came in as a transfer and immediately won the locker room over in 2 months. And he was the clear on leader. Players responded well to him. I think he's a guy who also fits the system well. He's a guy who's been in a lot of RPO systems, a lot of those half field read kind of areas where you're trying to get the ball out quick, try and play with some of the tempo. His film in 2023 was not as good as his SMU film. Thought he should have declared after the 2022 draft, but I also don't blame him as much. I thought the receiving production was underwhelming last year at Wisconsin. I also thought the offense wasn't tailored as much to throw deeper passes, which Mordecai kind of, looked to do a lot at SMU. I think he's a guy who can get the ball out quick. Accuracy can waver at times. He has choppy feet, happy feet a little bit, and so you're going to work on a little bit on that footwork. But I think this is a guy who, in my opinion, is a gamer. He's a guy who will try and make winning plays. He's a guy who can extend plays, in the way that a lot of 49er fans really like Brock Purdy for the extension of plays and, creating opportunities when opportunities weren't there. That's something that I see in Mordecai. I don't know if he's ever going to be an NFL starter, nothing like that, but solid backup. I think I could see him develop into one. We'll see if that's this year or in the year next.
Greater arm talent. Who has better? Who has a better deep ball? Rohan.
You're saying Brock or Tanner?
Yeah,
I'll go Brock just because of the accuracy. I think Brock's accuracy is pretty good. I think maybe arm strength is comparable. I think you could go one way or another with the arm strength necessarily, but I think Brock, I'll give the nod to his accuracy because his footwork is also really good.
They really tried to draft the next Brock Purdy, didn't they? Or sign the next Brock. That's really like.
Hey, if it works out, it works out. So
yeah.
Nobody's going to be complaining if it ultimately comes together.
Yeah, right on, man. All right, buddy. What do you got going on your channel? Make sure you guys all subscribe. It's Rohan Chakravarthi. Let me pop it back up. If you haven't subscribed to Rohan yet, make sure you do. He does a great job. I spelled it out there for you. I spelled his last name on this little overlay, all by memory on my first try, man. So I'm pretty impressed with myself. Rohan Chakravarthi. Make sure you guys subscribe. He writes for 49ers Web Zone, so follow him on Twitter as well. And then Red Zone Podcast. Who is that? Is that you and Marco?
Yeah, both of us.
I didn't know you guys. So that's the name of the podcast, right? Is it?
Yeah,
got it.
Yeah.
So you guys, help me understand, because I've only known it Clutch Gene Sports, and I know Rohan YouTube channels. So where do they find 49ers Red Zone?
Oh, we renamed the 49ers Red Zone into Clutch Gene. So Clutch Gene's there. Marco handles a lot of that stuff on top of the personal channel here. And so, yeah, that's the combination. And so, yeah, I mean, for me, we'll see what the schedule looks like over the next 2 weeks as I wrap up finals and all that kind of stuff. But regardless, a lot of draft talk, a lot of this pre-OTA talk as we kind of get into it. And I'm excited to, get back and talk some ball soon.
Right on, man. I appreciate you coming on. Rohan's going to be on with me someday. We're trying to figure out what day throughout the season, because I think he's a super intelligent, good guy, good at analyzation, not a homer, which I appreciate. And I appreciate whenever you come on. Real quick, guys, if you haven't hit that like button by now, please do. It helps me out a lot. If you're watching on Rohan's channel, do it over there as well. Subscribe to my channel if you have not yet. I'm almost at 10K. I got to get there before the season, and it's going to happen. I'm also going to be sponsored by Bang this time next year. Trust me, it's going to happen.
Get into existence.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Also, guys, I'm a real estate and mortgage broker in the state of California. Also have a solar company, and I partner with a credit company. You can find out all of that stuff. Subscribe to my second channel. I just put up a new video on my second channel, Mill Tickets, where I interview self-made millionaires. It's all about finance. You can find all of this stuff on my website. It's at the bottom of your screen, RyanGHensley.com. Again, it's just my name, RyanGHensley.com. Go visit my website. Everything about me is there. I'd appreciate it. If you need me for real estate, mortgage questions, California, I'm your guy. Rohan, thanks a lot, man. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you, man. And I'm definitely looking to be back soon.
All right, buddy. Talk to you guys soon. Thank you guys so much. I'll be back tomorrow. Tomorrow, Friday, 9 a.m. with Chase Sr. from Chat Sports. Thanks, guys. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching the Ryan G. Hensley Show. Your support is greatly appreciated. If you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel. The Ryan G. Hensley Show is brought to you by Hensley Real Estate and Mortgage. I've been operating my real estate business in the state of California since 2009, and I would love to help your family. We are also sponsored by Hensley Solar. I can put solar on your house in up to 38 states. Underdog Fantasy is a sponsor of the channel. Please check out the details in the description to see how you can join Underdog Fantasy and get $100 matched in your initial deposit. And finally, I want to give a shout out to my sponsor, Blue Water Credit. They are the best credit repair company I've ever dealt with. If you want to fix your credit, reach out to Blue Water Credit. Details in the description for all of my sponsors. Again, thanks so much for watching. Hit that like button, subscribe if you're not, and turn on notifications